So here's a question on the section of scatter plots. It's on the topic of correlation coefficient. So here's the question. The following data pairs represent the average temperature X in degrees Fahrenheit and electricity cost Y in dollars for different homes. And then there's the list of points. Which of the following values is most likely the closest to the correlation coefficient of the data? So first, I would like you to know that the R here this R represents correlation coefficient. Okay. So if you're wondering why is there an R there, that's the variable for correlation coefficient. You'll notice that our correlation coefficient, they're giving us numbers -1, -0.5, 0, 0.5, and 1. So first, correlation coefficient is a number that represents the strength of the relationship between X and Y. So right now our X is degrees Fahrenheit and Y is in dollars for electricity costs. So it's saying, do they have a connection? Do they have a relationship? Is their relationship strong or is their relationship weak? And that's what correlation coefficient represent. So to see as a visual, so I'm going to do R equals 0 first. If our correlation coefficient is 0, so this is our third choice here, if that was our answer, if we plotted all of the points, our points will look something like this. You'll notice they're scattered everywhere. R equals 0 means there's no relationship. So you can't really see a pattern. It doesn't make a line. There's no slope. It's just scattered, like scatter plots. So this would be no relationship. If we had R equals 0.5, actually let me just use a different color. R equals 0.5. Then our points are there's a somewhat pattern, and it's going to increase like this. Just take some of these out. So you'll notice that our slope is 0.5, so there's somewhat of a relationship, and it's increasing. So as we go towards the right, the points go higher. So let's say, but so I also see R equals -0.5. Then it would be the same thing, but it would be decreasing. So you'll notice here we're increasing. So if we had a R equals -0.5, there would be somewhat of a relationship, but instead this time it's decreasing. So here you'll notice, okay, it's somewhat increasing. This one is decreasing. So I see somewhat of a line, but it's not an exact straight line. So the strength isn't strong, but there's somewhat of a relationship. And then the last two options are if the correlation coefficient is 1 or -1. So if the correlation coefficient is 1, then our points would be somewhat really close to one another. Like, if it was actually exactly 1, they would be exact. It would make almost a line, or exactly a line. You'll notice it's increasing because it's positive. If r is 1, it's actually a straight line, but just for the sake of having a realistic example, you'll notice here in our question it says most likely. So if it's near 1, it will be very, very close to a straight line. So what if it's a negative 1? So you may have already picked up on the pattern. If it's negative, once again, it's going to look like a straight line. But this time, it'll be decreasing. So if you compare these 3 examples, or total of 5, but the 3 colored examples, from the left side here, if the points are scattered and you can't really form and see any kind of relationship, our correlation coefficient is 0, just to say no relationship. If our correlation coefficient is 0.5, you see somewhat of a relationship. You see a bit of an increase or a decrease, but it's not anywhere close to a straight line. And then on the right side, when your correlation coefficient is 1, then you do have a direct relationship, a very strong relationship, and it's generally represented by a straight line. So there's the increase. Oh, I forgot to write this. R is equal to negative 1. And this is if there's a decrease. So you might wonder, but Miss O, if I go back to the example, they don't give me a scattered plot, or they don't give me a graph. So it's actually your responsibility to get all of these points and plot them to see what kind of correlation they have. So I know I cropped this picture out, but if you look at the left side, they should give you a graphing option where you can plot these points, or you can go to Desmos. So I actually went to Desmos myself. So if you look at this left side here, I plotted each of the points individually, and you'll notice that each point is represented by a color. I plotted them together, and then you're going to look at your scatter plot here and see which correlation coefficient best represents our scatter plot. So you might notice first that there is definitely an increase. I feel like I can get a better one. Here's the line of best fit. This is an increase. So I know my correlation coefficient has to be a positive number. And you'll notice, oh look, it looks really close to a straight line. It doesn't look like very scattered. It's not all over the place. We definitely see a relationship, and it's very close to a straight line. So because it's very close to a straight line and it's increasing, our correlation coefficient will be 1. Here.